The decline in Norway's currency has been so dramatic.
There is an exodus of billionaires and super rich individuals leaving Norway.
What you can see here is a graph showing the value of the Norwegian krone, a currency which many consider to be a safe haven for savings. Life has become more difficult for both immigrants and Norwegians, and many believe that society has become more closed off than before. Despite money from gas and oil sales flowing into the state coffers and the country's economy remaining surprisingly strong, state hospitals across Norway have been ordered to cut spending and employment. This has led to entire wards being closed and longer waiting times for less critical operations and procedures. Many doctors and nurses have left their jobs to work in the more lucrative private sector. For instance, Oslo University Hospital, OUS, was instructed to cut 500 jobs at the end of 2023. In 2024, more than 3 dozen ultra-high net worth individuals left the country. These individuals are among the richest Norwegians. The main reasons for their departure are their aversion to current high taxes and uncontrolled immigration.
The Norwegians thought that oil would solve all their problems, but now it, along with the krone, is becoming a source of even greater problems. By 2050, government spending will exceed social revenues and benefits by a factor of 7, and healthcare will no longer be as good as it is today. Although, in my opinion, it is not good at all right now.
In 2024, the average salary in Norway is around 42,000 Norwegian kroner gross per month, equivalent to approximately 3,652 euros. While this is relatively good money, taxes in Norway are so high that, given the cost of living, it is not as favorable as it seems. Many people are currently complaining about working and living in Norway, so we decided to find out what it's really like.
To me, it was very, very obvious. It's only a matter of time before Norway becomes a major oil and gas producer.
When we think of Norway, we tend to associate it with stability and prosperity, as well as one of the highest standards of living in the world. It has also been considered a model of natural resource management for decades. It was the oil boom of the 1970s that transformed Norway from an agricultural and fishing nation on the periphery of Europe into one of the world's richest economies. However, the situation today shows that even such a solid foundation does not guarantee endless prosperity. Norway owns one of the world's largest wealth funds, the government pension fund Global, commonly referred to as the Norwegian Pension Fund or Oil Fund. Its value in mid-2025 was over 19 trillion Norwegian kroner, approximately $1.8 trillion. This is roughly equivalent to the combined annual GDP of Spain and Portugal. This fund was created to diversify oil and gas revenues and protect future generations from the effects of resource depletion.
The numbers ticking behind me here is the real-time value of the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund. This fund is basically the resources that we have generated on the Norwegian shelf, and it belongs to all of us, not just someone. The fund and the money from the fund pays for roads, education, and healthcare. And it is the savings for our children, and their children again.
Each Norwegian citizen is theoretically entitled to approximately 3.5 million kroner from the fund, equivalent to around 1.2 million zlotys. Sounds impressive? In theory, yes. But in practice, this money does not go directly into citizens' accounts. Instead, the fund serves as a budget buffer, an investment tool, with its assets invested in thousands of companies around the world, including Apple, Microsoft, Nestle, and major energy projects. For years, Norway has been synonymous with economic security, as evidenced by the stable exchange rate of the Norwegian krone. However, recent years have dealt a serious blow to this image. From late 2022 to mid-2025, the krone lost around 25% of its value against the euro. Why? Contrary to appearances, it is not due to the collapse of the Norwegian economy, which is still one of the best managed in Europe, with low public debt and substantial reserves. The problem lies with global factors: falling gas prices following the energy crisis, weakening Norwegian exports, and the monetary policy of the Norwegian Central Bank, which did not raise interest rates as aggressively as the ECB or the Fed. Consequently, the krone has become less appealing to investors, prompting capital to flow towards safer currencies. However, this is only part of the picture. Norwegians are now facing social and structural problems that have been downplayed for years. Despite substantial revenues from raw material exports, the public sector is in crisis. As early as 2023, Oslo Universitetssykehus, the country's largest hospital, was ordered to reduce its workforce by the equivalent of 500 full-time positions. In 2024, other institutions introduced drastic cuts, closing wards and extending waiting times for elective surgeries. In some regions, it is estimated that the waiting time for hip replacement surgery has increased to 18 months, and up to 2 years for less urgent surgeries. Meanwhile, an increasing number of doctors and nurses are leaving the public sector for better paid positions in the private sector. According to data from the Norwegian Medical Association, as many as 17% of medical staff were considering emigrating to Denmark or Sweden for work in 2024. The paradox is that, although it is one of the richest countries in the world, Norway is experiencing symptoms of crisis that are more typical of much poorer countries, such as problems accessing healthcare, growing social inequality, and tensions surrounding immigration. Immigration has been one of the most contentious topics in recent years. According to official data, the number of immigrants in Norway will reach almost 1 million by 2024. With a population of around 5.5 million, this accounts for nearly 20% of the population. The largest groups come from Poland, Lithuania, Somalia, and Syria, with an increasing proportion being refugees and asylum seekers. This creates tension, particularly as the cost of social benefits increases, and people are saying that the state is unable to maintain such a generous welfare system as before. Another problem is taxes. Norway has been one of the countries with the highest taxes in Europe for years. The income tax rate ranges from 22% to 47.4% for the highest earners, and the richest are also affected by a wealth tax. For this reason, more than 30 billionaires and dozens of top-tier entrepreneurs left the country in 2024. This is not just a symbolic loss. The outflow of private capital could hinder the long-term innovation of the Norwegian economy.
This is evident from the departure of Norway's wealthiest citizens. Interest rates are rising and energy prices are constantly increasing. Many Norwegian companies have gone bankrupt as a result. They are unable to predict how much their electricity bills will be. Although the government announced today that it will allocate 7 billion kroner to help pay these bills, there are still no systemic solutions in place to properly support entrepreneurs. To be honest, these measures seem rather ad hoc.
Finally, let's talk about everyday life. Average costs can reach as much as 4,000 to 5,000 Norwegian kroner per month. The average gross monthly salary is 42,000 Norwegian kroner, equivalent to 4,269 euros. But consider the prices. Renting an apartment in Oslo costs around Norwegian kroner 15,000 per month. A litre of fuel costs over 22 Norwegian kroner, and a regular coffee in a cafe costs around 45 Norwegian kroner. On top of that, a family's groceries can cost Norwegian kroner 6,000 to 7,000, and electricity and heating bills can amount to 6,000 to 7,000 Norwegian kroner. Consequently, despite their high earnings, many Norwegians and immigrants admit that their real purchasing power has fallen dramatically. They are increasingly giving up holidays abroad, limiting their spending and looking for additional sources of income. A decade ago, Norway was a symbol of comfortable living. Today, however, there is a growing feeling that it is no longer possible to live as comfortably in the land of fjords as before. Does this mean the end of the Norwegian paradise? Not necessarily. the country still has substantial reserves and a low level of public debt, at around 50% of GDP, as well as one of the best fiscal policies in the world. However, the current crisis shows that even the richest countries are not immune to global turmoil, demographic changes, and the rising costs of maintaining the welfare state model. While money in pension funds is important, the real lives of residents are quite another matter. While everything looks good on paper, in reality the country is beginning to struggle with problems that could eventually lead to its downfall. A potential global financial crisis could knock Norway off its feet. The coming years may prove to be very interesting for Norway. However, this is yet another example of a Western country where ordinary people and even billionaires are finding life increasingly difficult despite a relatively good economic situation. This does not bode well for the future. That's all from me for today. Take care and bye.